Welcome everyone. Welcome to our webinar with Lisa Pulliam, 4 Steps to Riding Confidence. So I am really excited for this presentation today, and I can already see by many of the names that I'm coming through quickly that we have many familiar members of our HorseClass community here. But I want to give kind of a formal introduction to who both of us are, to why we're here, and also to what you're going to be learning today. So I'm Callie. I'm the founder of HorseClass. At HorseClass, we have been publishing education around all things horses, training, riding, horse care for over 13 years. And this is one of the reasons that we're here with Lisa. Lisa and I have actually been working together for a few years, and most recently on this project, Finding Calm, because this is Lisa's specialty, is helping riders move past nervousness, move past fear, move past accidents, and truly find calm and find confidence, and not just in the moment, but also, long term, really making a plan for doing this. And as you will find as we go through this, Lisa walks her talk, because Lisa is also a rider, an equestrian. Lisa has a very special, but also sensitive and sometimes challenging off-the-track thoroughbred named Cody.
Yes.
And Cody is a big part of Lisa's story and why we're here, why we're all here together. So I will speak for both of us in saying we both have a passion for helping other riders. For me, I love seeing riders be able to experience those moments of joy and connection to the horse. And I think that can happen on the ground, that can happen in the saddle, that can happen hanging out with our horse, or that can happen doing really cool and big things. And as I was teaching riding, because even before I started HorseClass and doing the online publishing, I was a riding instructor, and I worked with students, one-on-one every day. And this was one of the biggest things that I saw then working one-on-one, and that I still see now and hear from literally thousands of you in our community that, email in and leave comments on HorseClass every day, is confidence. And how do I become more confident? How do I move past this nervous energy that just takes me out of what I know can be the joy of riding? So today, Lisa is here to share some in-the-moment tips to help you when you're feeling that nervous energy, when you're feeling that, Lisa, I love your words, the quiver in your liver.
And that's an oldie. I think it's my mother-in-law that gave me that expression.
Well, I like it because I think we could all relate to that feeling of where you just kind of feel that like butterflies, that little turn in your stomach or your shoulders coming up. So in this webinar, Lisa is going to be sharing a strategy, a very specific strategy for what you can do in those moments. But I think more importantly, Lisa's going to be walking us through this 4-step framework of making a lasting change, of really incorporating finding calm and finding confidence into your riding, into your horsemanship, and into your life. So it's not just an in the moment, do this to feel better, but it's here's how you really live this and make a true change. And I think that's what a lot of people are going to find as well is, and I've been down this path before. I've done some of these things. I do the take a deep breath and I need something more.
Yeah.
So before we officially kick off here, I want to do 2 things. First of all, I want to welcome you again, everyone that is here, that's attending live, and also those of you later that are tuning in and watching the recording. And we've already got some awesome messages coming in the chat. So if you haven't already put a note in the chat, just drop in there. Tell us where you're coming in from. Again, amazing to see everyone coming in from literally all over the world.
Yeah.
And as you're all dropping your comment in, I want to tell you a little bit more about how Lisa and I connected and why Lisa can really help you through this. Because again, it's not just her own personal experience, not just that she cares, but Lisa really has the formal education, the credentials, and the experience to be here helping us today. So Lisa and I first connected when I hosted Natural Lifemanship at the farm campus in Pennsylvania. And Natural Lifemanship teaches a model of equine-assisted psychotherapy. And we were hosting their trainings where they were working with mostly professionals in the field, but also lay people as well, on how they could use this model. And Lisa was there. And since then, Lisa has gotten certifications with Natural Lifemanship. But since that event, we stayed in touch, and Lisa ended up coming and developing part of her business, Stable Minded, at the farm campus. So helped riders there, helped her clients there, and used some of our school horses. And we just, started talking more and more about how do we bring this out to riders in a bigger way. I had done Calm and Confident, my program, back in 2014. So this is something that I noticed a need for. I had personal experience in my own life of knowing what it was like to ride with fear, and was starting to seek out people that could help. And we talked and said, this needs something bigger and deeper, and let's, Lisa, build it from the ground up, something that we can put out to the community. So Lisa is a mental health professional. She has trained as a Life Breakthrough Academy coach, a Highlands Ability Battery consultant, and recently earned her master's in clinical counseling with a trauma concentration from Eastern University. Lisa's also trained in EMDR, and as I mentioned earlier, has certifications with Natural Lifemanship. So again, we're in good hands with Lisa. And with that, again, thank you, Lisa, for not only building this curriculum, Finding Calm, this program, but for being here and doing this webinar for us today.
Yeah, Callie, it's super exciting to be here. And this is the culmination of a friendship and work side by side. And I'm excited to be able to finally share this because it's what I had to use, right? It was my breakthrough before it became what's going to be somebody else's breakthrough. And so I'm super excited about how this will bring joy back to many fellow horse people. That's my biggest hope.
Yes. Yeah. That is beautifully said. And for those of you that are here, regardless of whether you are brand new to riding, whether you are a lifelong rider, what discipline you ride, we have professionals that I know are here. We have people that are competitors. And we have people that are weekend trail riders, and also folks that I know are enjoying working with their horses from the ground. So wherever you are coming into this from, you are at the right place, whether you have had an accident, even a big accident that you're looking at what's the path forward, or if you are just starting out and you're realizing, ooh, something could happen here. And that's giving you that what ifs. Again, you're at the right place. This content, this teaching that Lisa's going to be sharing today applies to all of those cases.
Yeah, absolutely. As I've been thinking about it this morning, it really crosses disciplines because we're not teaching a training style. We're not teaching a particular discipline. It is about you as you show up with the horse that you're with. And whether that's a horse you own or lease or share with a friend or have in your backyard or go to the barn, I mean, it doesn't really matter the horse, the breed. What matters is who you are in those moments. And that's what this program is about. And that's what we're going to give as a launching point today. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am going to kind of officially turn this over to Lisa to walk us through the 4 steps to riding in confidence. Before I do, just so you have a bit of an idea of how this time together is going to go, Lisa's going to be doing a lot of teaching here. So you're going to want to have something where you can take some notes, where you can be making some notes for yourself of how this applies to you. If you have questions, write those down as well. So we will have a Q&A session at the end of this where we will go through as many questions as we can, but write them down first and we'll be doing the Q&A session at the end. So we're going to go through this. At the very end, we're also going to tell you about a special opportunity that we have been working on now for quite some time that is starting today. So you're going to want to go through this. We've got some really cool stuff all the way through. All right, I am going to pull up. There we go. Can everyone see the slide here for steps to riding in confidence?
And I have the controls, so I will be able to slide us over to the next slide.
Yep.
So we're going to jump right in with what does this look like to help you navigate through fear and anxiety? And there's a picture of what it looks like when you could ride with joy, right? That's Kodiak Jack. And this was a moment of actual fun, but it's not been our whole story. And so that in part is why I wrote Finding Calm and created this content. It's because it's been my own journey of working through fear, anxiety, expectations, all these things that rob us from calm. And so I really want to start off with like getting you to think about what steals your calm, what sabotages that, and what sabotages your confidence, to kind of set the framework for beginning to understand the why and then the what. And so here's a list of 10 things that came to my mind that I personally struggle with and that many of my clients have struggled with. And I thought it would be interesting if you go ahead and put your number in the chat box, or if you have something else that you would add to this, that you would put that on. And for those who are just listening, I'm going to go through these. So fear of getting hurt. Right? And we could call it fear, anxiety, worry, apprehension, cautiousness of literally a physical fall, a physical injury more than anything else. And, I don't know about you, but for me, as I've aged, this has become a bigger deal. And it's circumstantially a pretty big deal. So my daughter's getting married in August. I have an upcoming vacation. When I go to the barn today for my lesson, I am going to have a little bit more apprehension today than I'll have in 2 weeks from now after the vacation, or in a month and a half from now after the wedding, because I know what it feels like to be in pain, and I know what it will do to life if I get hurt, right? So that's caution. There's wisdom to that, but it can also steal our calm. And then, of course, memories from painful events, like the ones that we have when the horse steps on our foot, or when we get kicked, or when we fall and hit the ground harder than hard. Those memories bring up in our bodies and our minds an anticipation over, number 3, what might happen next, right? And so then we start becoming overly cautious, and we become like trying to plan it and do all the safety things. And some of those are really good things, but it begins to rob the calm. Now, another one I thought about, and this I've heard from other riders pretty often, the worry about others and horses in the same space when you're riding. And, kind of thinking about that person who maybe doesn't know how to steer real well, or that person that gets super intense, and how that might impact the horse, or the horse that's a little flighty. So that can steal the joy, impact the situation. Then there's anticipation of failure. What will people think of me if? What will happen if I don't reach that dreaded goal? What will happen if I fail again, like I failed last time? So there's your previous failures that are impacting how you feel. And it's really taking a ding in the confidence, right? Then there's this external and internal pressures, and that is what we think we should be, where we should think we should be, how we think we should be as an equestrian, as a rider, as a horse person, as a human, and then the external. So when we adopted Cody 2 years ago, the plan was 6 months of training for him. Well, we're 2 years out, and my sensitive old thoroughbred is having trouble getting with the program, and his timeline is not my timeline, and that's costing us money that I didn't anticipate. And there's pressure in the family context. There's support, but there's both internal and external pressure on time and finances. Then there's lack of experience and skill. So typically after an experience that's gone wrong with our horse, we realize what we didn't know, but that doesn't mean we learn it immediately. And so feeling not competent or not capable, or in one case, I'm working with a client that she knew what she was doing and then got trained in another program. And now she doesn't feel like she knows what she's doing at all. And so she's paralyzed. Do I do this or do I do that? And that, for many of you, that's where you find yourself, because the horse world has changed so much over the last 30, 40 years. So then the last two things are your personality, like just how you were born and wired up, and then life outside the tack. So who are you? What are the pressures and the dynamics of your personal life now? But what has shaped you up until this point? If you're raised in a really anxious and fearful environment, chances are that's showing up when you get with your horse. And like I said earlier, when I say your horse, I don't mean necessarily the one that you foot the bill on, although that may be the case, but the one that you ride, the whatever horse it is that you're with at that time. So I'm just going to glance over here just real quick at the chat, and I see that there are lots of numbers. Fear of getting hurt is a top one, anxiety, lots of multiple numbers and not just one thing. And I think that's true, right? We each struggle in a different way, but the struggle is real no matter what it looks like. And so if you have been following me through the Junk in Your Trunk series HorseClass that we've been putting out since December, January of this past year, you'll know that a lot of what I've struggled with has been on the ground with my horse. I just saw Debbie mention, I don't trust my horse. Well, yeah, I went through a season with Cody where I did not trust him because of his behavior on the ground. And that set me back in my riding because I couldn't even do the stuff on the ground to get into the tack, right? And I wasn't comfortable being alone. And there were all sorts of elements that came up long after I wrote the Finding Calm curriculum, which was really based out of an accident that happened. And I don't even like putting the word accident on this slide. I was going to say the falls or the situation, because accident feels so big and dramatic. And what happened in my, like, what I think other people might say about what happened was minor, but what I experienced and what happened was major. So this is Teddy, who I had two riding falls on within like a 4-month period of time, I guess about 4 months. And one was he spooked and took off running, and I couldn't get him to stop. And I threw myself off Superman style, which in hindsight was probably not the greatest plan, but my body was preserved. My fear began in a new way. It was the first time I had hit the dirt in 30 years. So I grew up riding. I hugged my uncle riding double and galloped through fields on trail rides with him. I rode in summer camp. I rode a year in college. I've gone trail riding on trips. I know I spent a lot of time hitting the dirt during summer camp, jumping over fences, and would get popped out of the tack easily. But the kind of fear I had after that fall off of Teddy, and because it happened at the canter gate, made it really hard to canter after. And the motion of like the lunge, the lurch forward would just get me. And here I was in my work as a mental health professional, understanding what the nervous system is doing, having a mental knowledge concept of what was happening, and yet not being able to do anything about it. Well, I rode some other school horses while Teddy went back into training. And then I got to this point and it was time for the lesson. Teddy was ready. We thought I was ready, or I should say we thought Teddy was ready. Put my foot in that stirrup at that mounting block, and he was spooky the whole time. And we got through the lesson. I sat the spooks, and then on a loose rein, walking so nicely along, I asked my daughter to bring me a bottle of water. And when she moved, Teddy spooked again. And all I know is I was like a rocket being launched out of the tack, and I landed on my butt and bruised my tailbone pretty badly. And I'll never forget laying there in the dirt, just sobbing, not so much because of the injury, but because I knew it was over. And everyone in the arena at that time had been with me through this journey with my beloved Teddy. I still love him. And we all knew, like, we were not a match. He was spooky, and so was I, ultimately. I grew up in a home that was emotionally and physically abusive and neglectful. And what that did to my nervous system and how I show up in the world has been something I've been working on for the last 10 to 15 years. And while there's tremendous healing and transformation in me, the reality is I am still spooky. I still hold tension in my body. And this precious horse and his life experience, which we don't know, but his symptoms show the same things. And one of the clues to that with Teddy, and this is like a little extra here that I wasn't originally going to share, but I think this is important for you as horse people to know, and you may not know this. A horse feels our heart rate within 6 feet. There's scientific evidence that they notice a change in heart rate within 6 feet. If you think about a horse as a herd animal, they are relying on each other for safety and protection. So when that one horse sees or hears or feels that mountain lion coming over the hill, their heart rate is going to be elevated. And the other horses around them that may not see, hear, or smell notice something has happened in one of their herd mates. And they don't ask questions, they just respond and they take off in their flight pattern, right? Because that is how they have been designed to survive. So Teddy, I knew from my 2 years of working with him that he was so tuned in to heart rate, because I would go out to the field to connect with him and he would not connect with me. He would walk away from me. I was like, what is going on? The problem was the walk to the field raised my heart rate to 70, 80, 90 beats per minute. And my resting was 68. And Teddy was really cool with me at 68. Anything higher than 68 was not good. It activated his survival system. And the same thing happens when I'm in the tack as when I'm on the ground with this horse or with any horse. And so much of what we need to learn as horse people is, how is the horse showing up? And how am I showing up? What is the horse's pattern of being in this world? What is my pattern of being in this world? And then how do we bring this together in a really healthy way? And so, I'm looking again at your comments, like you have familiar experiences to this. And after injury, especially, or a fall, or if we call it an accident, that comeback is even harder, because now our mind is remembering something that happened to us that was hurtful. And so the mind and the body working together is going to do what it is designed to do to protect us, right? Like, when we touch a hot stove, we never touch a hot stove again. And there's a reason for it. It's our autonomic nervous system recording that information and saying, nope, that is not good. And getting through that experience, not over it, but through it, navigating through that kind of experience in terms of a riding accident with a horse, takes a particular kind of effort to do it in a healthy and really powerful way. So this is where I want to go into the science that you need to know about finding calm and finding confidence in your horse handling and your riding. And it's not going to just affect your horsemanship, but I talk about this all the time. It's your humanship. How you show up in your relationships and your personal life is going to be how you show up in your horse life. And so this is information that will benefit you in every aspect of life. So this model I originally learned in my training with Natural Lifemanship, and I'm so grateful to them for that. And it's also part of like the trauma-informed education and approach to mental health and overall emotional wellness. And so it was discovered, created by Bruce Perry, and then also adapted by a man by the name of Dan Siegel. And so if you could see my hand, this is the most simplified version of your brain. And it's important to know that this is simplified. Okay. So even though on this slide, you're seeing whoops, we just lost the presentation. There it's back. Okay. So even though on this slide, you're seeing things like brainstem, diencephalon, limbic, and neocortex, the brain is much more complex than that. It's not just a bowling ball with 4 parts on the top of your body, but it's integrated into your nervous system. This is a simplified way to think about it. So your brainstem, think about it as the base of your wrist. And I want you to memorize this so you can teach it to every person you know, because it is a game changer. So your brainstem is what activates when there's a trigger. And that trigger is the perception of harm. It is that sense of being afraid. It is that sense of alarm, like, whoop, something's happening here. This does not feel emotionally or physically safe. That's a trigger. And in life, we can be triggered by anything. The color of the sky, the smell of the air or the room, the temperature, the sound of something. All of our senses are activated when we are triggered. And our senses are in the second portion of our brain, the diencephalon. It's also responsible for movement. So our 5 senses plus movement. And the picture of this from early childhood is the baby cries and mom picks up that baby. And what's the first thing mom does? Typically starts rocking and patting and saying, shh, 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 shh. This is movement. This is sensory movement. And it's really, really critical to regulation and to understanding how the body is responding to fear. So you have your trigger, and then your brainstem responds in fight, flight, freeze, faint, or fawn. Your sensory motor is like your thumb region. Your next layer up is your limbic system, or what we know as our emotions, and it's the relationship and connection hub. So when that baby is being soothed, emotions are being activated of security, a sense of security, comfort, warmth. Those are the things that might be experienced between that baby and that mother, and they're connecting. And then the top portion of the brain is the neocortex, and that's your cognitive or thinking part of your brain. And so when you're triggered from 12 100ths of a second to 22 100ths of a second, it's a mouthful, you flip your lid and you're no longer thinking clearly. Just from the moment you're triggered, all of those things just are automatically happening to put you in a survival place. So the goal in finding calm and gaining confidence and moving through anxiety and fear and worry is understanding where you are in your brain, and has your brain gone offline and checked out from the moment, and what can you do to bring your brain back online? That is what this is all about. It is about tapping into that thinking portion by gaining awareness of what's happening emotionally, taking in what's happening from a sensory perspective to quiet that brainstem response and respond to the trigger by saying, hey, we're okay. Or in some cases, oh, thanks for doing the job that you were designed to do because you just protected me. And so anything that is patterned, repetitive, and rhythmic, the rocking, patting, mama, brings about regulation, nervous system co-regulation. All right, let me apply this to horses. A horse has a similar brain structure to a human. They respond very quickly in that brainstem. Their diencephalon, their senses are super active. They do have emotions and desire relationship. They're a herd animal. And they do have a thinking ability. If you spend any time with a horse, you know that they have the ability to think and change. There's the research that's out there that says they have a prefrontal cortex as well. We're not going to go into that here. But what's important for you to know is that when you are with the horse, part of the reason why you feel safe and secure with them is because there is co-regulation happening, and you feel a sense of like they're thinking and they're in the present moment. When you are struggling with trust with your horse, and when you're struggling with the relationship with your horse, it may be because they're in a place of freeze, or they're in a place of fight or flight, and that is dysregulating to the nervous system. Here's one last thing that I'm going to say about this. What is so neat is that when that mom holds that baby and pats that baby, and that baby goes like this, and then their thinking part of their brain comes on. They have begun to regulate with their mother. And if you notice in interactions with your horses, when they take a breath, that's when we know that they have moved in their brain and in their body to a new place. They are thinking about what just happened. They're coming off of a stress response, and they're able to be fully present in that moment with you. That's why in the industry, we get excited when a horse licks and chews and takes a breath and lowers their head. It's because we're seeing what's happening in them, in their nervous system, in a way that is reassuring to us. And we can mirror that with them, and then we can ask them to mirror that with us. And when I say mirror, I mean being co-regulated with in that moment. That's how I'm using that expression, mirror. All right. So as Callie said earlier, we're going to do Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, write those down. We're going to open this up for discussion. But this is like the foundational science principle about calm and confidence, and what are some of the things that we need to do to move into that. So I'm going to pause for 1 second and say, here's the question you could begin asking yourself and about the horse you ride. Am I in a survival state in a moment, or has survival become a trait? Am I living hypervigilant, anxious, worried, irritated, avoidant, frozen, dissociated, dysregulated? Those are some of the words to describe what happens when survival becomes a trait. It is supposed to just be a state that activates for a moment. And here's why. It comes down to the autonomic nervous system, which we typically think of it as sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So I remember it this way. Sympathetic is survival, the S's, whereas parasympathetic, the R in the para, reminds me of rest and refueling, or the P for peace. So these things are happening automatically in our body. The survival sympathetic nervous system activates when needed and then should quiet back down. The parasympathetic nervous system should be activated and coming in and out, keeping things going automatically. There is a theory out there called the polyvagal theory that I talk about pretty extensively in Finding Calm, that takes our sympathetic nervous system responses and actually divides it a little bit further and says fight flight is one way that we respond in survival, and then freeze or dissociation is another way that we respond when fight flight doesn't work. And that is where we begin to see learned helplessness. And the challenge is that dead quiet horse you bought, that you started building a relationship with, starting to know that they have a voice and they have a say, and what happens now becomes reactive and difficult to work with, and you wonder what happened. They may be going out of the shutdown freeze state and coming back into the dorsal state, and that polyvagal theory refers to. And now you got to work with them in that place. But if you don't have this understanding, you just can feel completely overwhelmed. And then you're activated into survival and they're activated into survival, and you're a hot mess together. Is this familiar for any of you? And so there's hope. There's hope to gain understanding and knowledge in order to move through the challenges that you're facing, to find calm and confidence on the other side. And if you're just brand new to this, if you haven't had any of these negative experience with horses and you're just learning, I'm so excited for you. It is the opportunity for you to learn this information from the get-go and build this into your horsemanship practice. So we have made this resource available for you to download. I'm imagining you grabbing it and screen saving it on your phone, or printing it and putting it in your tack locker or your journal for your horsemanship work, whatever that looks like. But the Finding Calm framework, I love acronyms. And so CALM stands for these 4 things. And these are the things that will give you confidence. 1 is connection, 2 is assessing, 3 is learning, and 4 is motivating or motivate. And I'm gonna go through this in a little bit more detail so you have a better sense of what I'm talking about with these things. So connect. I am not talking about dressage connection, okay? I am talking about relationship connection, that limbic system portion of the brain that creates co-regulation between you and the horse you ride, as well as you and the humans in your equestrian community. Now, for me, my riding experience has been around a barn. I don't have my horse at home. And so my community of people that support me, I have a trainer, I have a riding instructor, I have people I ride with. That's my community. I don't know what your community looks like. It may be your partner, it may be your daughter or son, but who are the people that you are connecting with that you can borrow their nervous system when you're dysregulated so that you can show up regulated for your horse? That is where we start looking at that in more detail in the Finding Calm program. But even before we get there, first we have to identify, what does a secure connection look like? What does it look like to build a secure connection with others? And this taps into your relationship story. So depending upon what part of the world you live in, what culture you were brought up in, how old you are, you will have a different theory about what a healthy relationship should look like. And the thing is, the way we show up in our human relationships typically is the way we show up in our horse relationships. And in fact, I'm going to be really transparent here for a second. I am struggling with Cody, and I'm at a crossroads with him. And I am in therapy because all mental health professionals also should be in their own therapy so that they don't bring their junk into a session with a client. So I'm in therapy, and I'm at a season in my life with my husband where we are, I like to say, growing to the next level. Like we're practically empty nesters, and we're working on that. Well, in my therapy session, I'm talking about my horse, and then I'm talking about my husband, and then I'm talking about my horse, and then I'm talking about my husband. And I came home the other day and I was like recapping things to my husband. And he's like, sometimes I feel like Cody in your life. And I was like, huh, sometimes I feel like you and Cody are alike. There are things that show up that expose our relationship style. And that shows up in our basic humanship and horsemanship. And so the connection we need to have with our horse to help our horse feel confident can be hindered by our own insecurities and the way that we want to connect. And so it's really important to kind of take a pulse on yourself and then say, okay, what's the personality and the needs of my horse? And how do I meet these needs in a really appropriate way? I think typically, sometimes with horses, we think a horse is a horse is a horse. So we just need to do it this way with each horse. But just like a human, levels of pressure, levels of expectation, how much we talk, how we move, how we touch, how we interact isn't going to be received the same way from each horse. And as an equine assisted therapist, I've been in environments where I've been able to work with dozens of different horses, sometimes 3 or 4 horses on a given day. If I expect each of those horses to respond to me the same way because I'm doing it the same way, it's going to be miserable. I need to tune in to what my horse needs as much as I need them to be able to tune in to what I need. And that is a growth process that we explore in Finding Calm, because as that relationship connection develops, confidence just blossoms and insecurity and fear dissipates. When things feel good on the ground, then things feel good in the tack. Let me say it this way. When things feel good on the ground, things can feel good in the tack. Tack can be a completely different experience because you're more vulnerable. You have less control than when you are on the ground. And yet, if things don't feel good on the ground and you get into the tack, oftentimes that's where pieces will also break down. Although there was one person that I saw noted that she feels better riding. It's the anticipation of riding that she is struggling with. And that would be pieces to explore and try to trace the root of that back. There's probably a good reason for it. Okay, so finding calm framework, the A, assess. How are you and your horse showing up, and what is impacting your physical and emotional state? So, what I love about Callie and what she puts out from HorseClass is that she has that wheel where we, as the person who's responsible for the horse, is taking into consideration that horse's physical health, their teeth, their hooves, their saddle fit, their nutrition, all those really important things. So, that's not what this is necessarily meaning. It's presuming that you've already taken care of that. And in the physical, you are taking care of all those things. But also looking at how your horse shows up emotionally. And then how do you show up physically and emotionally? And the assessment process is just awesome, especially with the growth tracker that I created, because it can target the areas of focus. Like, we need to work on this and make this as small as possible. And if you are part of Wise Riders and Andrea Wadey, she talks about the 1% rule, and the assess and the 1% rule go hand in hand together, because you're identifying what needs to be taken care of. And then you're identifying what's 1% effort towards that thing to make it change. And so, what does a yes look like? And what does a no look like? And where is there relaxation? Where is there resistance? What needs to be resolved first? These are the questions we ask when we are identifying, assess, like, what is happening here that is sabotaging calm and robbing us of confidence that we can fix one piece at a time. So with Cody, one thing I've been working on with him is assessing the quality of his feet, honestly, and ruling out that there are no issues there. And that's like a 3-month process, right? And put on the hind shoes, wait for the hoof to grow. Those are sorts of assessments that are in my growth tracker that we're working on. Uh, and yet we're also working on with him, that would be a physical. On an emotional side, an example is he's got some insecure attachment styles, rightly so, for his history of being abandoned for 7 years before I got him. He's insecure and he hollers when he's apart from a herd mate if the dynamic has changed. And so we're working through, what does his anxiety look like when it shows up, and how does it impact me? For me, what am I working through? I'm always working on something. But most recently, I'm working on developing my physical strength so I could be more balanced in the saddle. I'm working on making sure I get enough rest, because I've recently been diagnosed with present onset Lyme, not chronic Lyme, but present Lyme. And so I have to adjust expectations. So the goals I set to ride 5 days a week is not realistic in light of having Lyme. If I can have 3 easy rides a week, that's probably what I can handle. And so this assessment part is important to be an ongoing thing that we're always doing. What's working, what's not working, and what can we change with that 1% rule? Okay, so I'm seeing all of your comments in the chat, and I just am excited to read your stories and respond to them. So the L is learn. What do you and your horse need to learn in order to grow? I love thinking of an incident, an accident, a fall, as a way of reprocessing that by saying, what have I learned through this experience? What was missing? What do I need to work on? How can I develop a skill in this area? And I am literally talking like down to technique of, how do I make my body bigger to create a boundary with my horse so that I feel more safe in their space, to what do I need to do in order to use my voice what does my horse need to do and learn how to do? And then where can we find that education and mentorship and training? And that requires vulnerability, right? To say, hey, I don't have this figured out. Who can I talk to about this? And then in learning, also, how can we build resilience and resources in your growth journey together? So going back to that story of Teddy, one of the ways that I realized I lacked skill was actually processing that experience in therapy. And in my therapy, reviewing what happened, we used a protocol called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which gave me the opportunity to go through the experience again and come out on the other side. And what I was able to recognize through that processing was that I didn't use my voice. I didn't say, I'm not ready to get on Teddy. He seems a little stressed right now. I wanted to please my trainer. I wanted to achieve my own goal of making this horse my own. And I discounted my own gut and intuition in that moment. That processing in that particular therapy session was so life transforming. I have seen a radical shift in how I show up with Cody that never existed before that experience with Teddy, where I have made decisions that I have been able to walk away and say, I'm proud of myself. I said no, and I honored my body, I honored my mind, and I honored this horse in the process. And guess what? I had positive feedback all around because the people around me were not critical, were not hurtful, did not humiliate me, did not shame me, did not judge me. And so that goes back to the connect part, right? Who are the people that are supporting you in this journey? And what do you need to do to learn in an environment that is emotionally and physically safe? When we've had a setback like a fall or an injury or something that just went sideways, oftentimes we cannot move forward by ourselves. It can happen. And if that was your experience, I'm super grateful for you. But oftentimes we need at least one other person to borrow their nervous system, to find that co-regulation with, that confidence with, to get us to the next place. And really, that's what Wise Riders, the community of Wise Riders, is all about. That's what HorseClass is about. That's what Finding Calm is about, helping you figure out how to create a like-minded community of support around you. Okay, last point here on the Finding Calm framework and these 4 principles to help you find confidence as a rider and a horse person on the ground too, because that is just as valuable and can be just as much of a struggle. So M for motivate. What is your motivation and how will you mark the milestones? One of my favorite things to do is to get a picture of the vision. Find your why. What does success look like? What does calm look like? And what does confidence feel like? It's a look and a feel. What is happening in your mindset and in your body? Because like I said, we're not just, the brain is not a bowling ball on top of a stick. It is integrated. It is an organ. It has a nervous system. It is all intertwined and working together for our survival and our protection. And so we have to have a clear picture of what this looks like so we know what we're working towards, and to make sure that we can release expectations that are unnecessary to have on ourselves. Right? What we think we set out for, we might find in the long run isn't the thing. For example, Kodiak Jack, super quiet, non-spooky horse. He was the brilliant opposite of Teddy, right? I discounted the fact that he was a thoroughbred and an untrained thoroughbred, and that I am busy with my hands and holding tension in that part of my body, which I'm working on. And so I grab the reins and put pressure on the bit, and he's like, let's race around here like a lunatic. And it's not a fun ride. I also adopted Cody because I thought I was going to do trail riding with him. Well, guys, I'm not going to do trail riding with this horse. A, I don't have a trailer. B, I don't have a riding buddy that wants to go trail riding. C, I don't have the confidence to go trail riding by myself, even if I was to go buy a trailer. That is not who I was. It is not who I am right now. And I have to come to terms with that and say, that was my fantasy, but this is my reality. So what is a more realistic goal for Cody and I? Well, realistic goal for Cody and I is to do some trail obstacle work on property where there's space to do that, right? And to go when the barn goes as a group on a trail riding trip. I can go with that, right? It's a different need and a different desire. So if I change the expectations of my goals, then I could change the way I see my wins. And one of the things I really emphasize in putting the Finding Calm framework into action, because you're going to create your own Finding Calm framework plan when you participate in the Finding Calm program. And in that, the goals that you're going to set are going to be focused on realistic actions in which you can track your effort and your progress, not just the end result. You're going to be looking for, I put this much time in, and this is what I got out of it, and make it small, 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 so that you begin to develop the confidence that you are craving in your horsemanship and in your riding. Okay, so we got a little example that we're going to do. Callie's going to pop back on here and we're going to do a little case study of how do you apply the Finding Calm framework to a particular situation. Hello, good to see your face.
Yes, I'm really excited because I love hearing the stories to kind of, when there's a framework like this, to see how it maps with an actual, a story, a real life. So this is a story of a student that came to me about 2.5 years ago, and she wanted to work with her horse, getting more confidence on trail. So she brought her horse in for training. It was a quarter horse mare named Claire, and as I started working with them, I noticed, as often happens, and that's why, I like to share tools like that wheel, is there were multiple factors that were coming into the situation. So Martha was the rider, her goal for Claire was to be able to do trail riding, kind of like you just said that, you had thought for Cody. So she's like, I want to do trail riding. I'm feeling really nervous with Claire whenever we ride. She was really lucky. She had a beautiful little property, and Claire lived right there at her property. So they had a great connection when she was on the ground. They spent a lot of time together. She felt, really close to Claire. But as soon as she would go to ride, even like putting tack on, is when this nervousness would start between the two. So as I was working with Claire, with the mare, on going out and riding, I noticed there were some things for her, even beyond just the training element of needing to be out on the trail. There was a comfort issue going on. So what we discovered is we started, going in and looking at, okay, well, where is she uncomfortable? What could it be? One of the first things that I look at as a trainer was saddle fit. And found pretty quickly that the saddle wasn't fitting. So there was a pain issue first with, anytime that Martha would put the saddle on, and then of course would go to ride. So I'm curious, for you as a mental health professional, when students are looking at a problem, and sometimes it can feel like it can be so big because, Martha was thinking, okay, I just need to get training for Claire. And then as we started talking, even just part of the intake, it was like, well, we're going to need to look at this, and we're going to need to, look at this thing over here. So how do you recommend that people think about, like, what actually is the issue here? Is the issue me? Is the issue my horse?
Yeah, I think, it's familiar. It's a familiar situation for me too. And I think that we have to remember this like 4-part model. Not just the calm model, but I ask these 4 questions. What is going on in me? What is going on in the horse? What is going on between us? And what is going on in the environment? And those are questions to ask every single time we're with our horse, right? And I have a friend who tells me, Lisa, every day you show up with this horse is a different day. You cannot base it on the day before or the day after. which I believe. However, horses have a memory and we have a memory. So when things didn't go well yesterday, there's anticipation of things not going well today. So even in the case with Claire and Martha, you assess the horse's situation, you change the saddle. Now they should be comfortable, but they have a memory of the experience of tacking up being uncomfortable, and they could be responsive and reactive to the memory of that experience, right? So that is going to require some training techniques to work through that for the horse. But guess what? The human who saw the tension on that horse and tacking up that horse and remembers the behavior once she got into the saddle is also having an experience to that, right? So that's where things like, from a mental health perspective, these calm tips that I have in Finding Calm are so critical. So a good one in that situation would be like narrate the story. So in like a narrate the story, you're really working with your mind and your cognitive thoughts around that. And you are saying, okay, in this moment, this saddle fits. I feel good that I've put a good fitting saddle on this horse. So I'm going to take, and then you combine it with another tip, like you're going to take a breath. You're going to lower your heart rate. You're going to like find your zenny calm in that moment and be like, okay, this is good. And if all we do is get to the saddle on the back from a place of connection and calm, we've succeeded today. I'm going to take the saddle off. We're going to go graze. Right? So that's even, that 1% rule in there. We're just going to make things small instead of big, I think is the big thing. No pun intended.
And I love that calm tip that you just shared of narrate the story. It's one of the interesting things. So being a trainer, obviously my focus is just as much on the horse, and my professional background is much more in the side of, animal behavior.
Right.
And as humans, we've got this extra level, a little bit of extra equipment here that makes us so much more cognitive. Mm-hmm. And I love in what you teach of bringing in both the body side, regulating the body, using movement, using rhythmic stimulus, and at the same time using things like narrate the story, because the cognitive for humans is an important piece of it too. Like they both need to be there.
It's huge. And one of the videos we filmed for the course caught me proving it, because I was telling the story of the falls off Teddy and I started to cry. Mm-hmm. And that was prior to that EMDR processing. So my nervous system was really activated in that situation. And that is what happens. So like sometimes you'll find yourself, especially with a trainer, and you'll be like, well, I'm really worried about da-da-da-da-da. And you're talking about what you're worried about because you're trying to protect yourself. And the trainer goes, no, don't talk about that. Just get in the saddle, right? But because the trainer has seen what happens when somebody activates their own nervous system into that survival state, things go sideways. And yet the no, don't talk about it dismisses what the body is saying and creates a compound problem. Right?
Yes.
In that moment, if the trainer could say, wow, I really see that you're scared. If there was some empathy, eye contact, body lean in, let's just take a moment, take a breath, like shake your body out, do a body scan, like all these other tips that we can put into practice. Any one of them could be picked up on that moment and then get in the saddle. So abort mission isn't always the solution. There are times that we have to abort, right? When we're that dysregulated, but that's not always the solution.
Yeah. And another important piece, I believe, of Martha's story is that as I got to know her better and we started talking more, she shared with me that part of what was the motivation for her to bring Claire for training was that before, when she was working on this on her own, she would push through. So she would kind of do that self-talk to herself of like, I'm just going to do this. I know I can do this. And she would push through. Claire would be moving. It would kind of be a fight, but she was experienced enough. She could handle it. She could do it. But they would get to the point until they would start to leave the property to go out for like a loop on the trail. And then she would almost be panicking. So Claire was getting more and more heightened and nervous and jigging. And then she was getting to the point that even the things that she knew that she might have been able to try to use before, breathing or, trying to change her thought pattern, it was too far gone.
Yep.
And then that was starting to trigger, even when I was working with Claire and she would be coming to do a session, even driving in, she would notice that her heart was starting to pound and she was getting all of those nervous symptoms.
Yeah.
So what do you recommend to help us recognize first, where's the line? Where do we stop?
Yeah.
And how do we come back?
Yeah. Actually, it's really funny. I haven't thought about this in a long time, but years ago, and some people are in the same age category as me, there was this gal that was out called the Fly Lady. And she had this theory that you had to shine your kitchen sink before you went to bed if you did nothing else. Her principle was how you show up the next day starts with what you do with your sink the night before. And so I'm actually thinking about that because by the time we get to the barn, if we haven't prepared ourselves and we struggle with any kind of anxiety or worry or fear or apprehension or whatever you want to call it, we haven't prepared enough, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that in like you have failed. I'm saying there is opportunity to do so much preparation before we get to the barn, before we walk. And if you live at home and the horse is out back, there's so much that you can do the hour before you ride, the 2 hours before you ride, right? And so I'll give you an example. Actually, and I saw a comment saying that she's feeling ill just hearing about all this. So her nervous system is being activated at the thought of all of it. Well, my nervous system's been activated the last 24 hours getting ready to teach, right? Plus I'm riding later today. So it's like a double whammy, right? And I'm riding a horse that I haven't regularly ridden. So there's anticipation, not fear for that horse. So I'm like, okay, how do I get my nervous system calm? I ran through the talk this morning and I said to my husband, I'm sweaty, my mouth is dry, my belly's upset, I don't want to eat anything. I'm having all the sympathetic nervous system activation just for teaching today, right? And I'm like, okay, so how do you take care of yourself, Lisa? Slowed down, created some margin space, created a schedule. I need to make sure I am ready at this time. So I have to back up and, because I have I time warp. And then I did a meditation. I did a breathing exercise. I did a little mindfulness listening. I prayed because my faith is like so critical to my life. Like I tapped into all of those things. I asked for support from friends. I asked for some close horse friends to like hold this, and so those were the things that I did even while my nervous system was being activated. The same thing happens when we get ready to ride. So getting ready to go to the barn or going out to the field. I think we had that calm tip. Do you want to put that one up?
Yes. Yep. I'm just bringing it up.
Okay. So here's one of the calm tips that is my absolute go-to. It's called a 4-7-8 breathing exercise. And it's so simple, but it's so powerful. So 4-7-8, you inhale for a count of 4, you hold for a count of 7, and you exhale for a count of 8. And if any of you try this right now, if you do not have a breathing practice, you're going to be like, I can't do that. Well, okay, so then let's back it up and do some basic diaphragmatic breathing. So this is when we want to put a hand on our chest and a hand on our belly. And you want to take an inhale like you're sniffing flowers. So big through the nose, and then exhale out your mouth like you're blowing out candles. And if you inhale properly, your belly hand moves more than your chest hand. And when you exhale properly, your belly button kind of goes back and touches your back. So first with this proper breathing, then you inhale for this count of 4, hold for a count of 7, exhale a count of 8. And what this does is it calms the nervous system, because as your breath slowers, your heart rate slowers, your nervous system comes more into a grounded moment. So if I remember, and most times I do, I will practice this on the last like 10 minutes of the drive to the barn. Sometimes I'll change it up and I'll practice the breathing from telephone to telephone pole. And it's funny because I don't drive as fast when I'm breathing slowly. So I have to remember to keep my foot on the pedal and not go into like the zone at that moment. But then you could also practice it going from the barn to the pasture, the house, the back door to the barn. You could also do it when you're with your horse. So before you put the halter on, or right after you put the halter on, or before you walk out the gate. And what you'll notice is when you start doing these breathing practices with your horse, they're going to give you feedback. They're going to drop their head. They're going to lick and chew. They're going to yawn. They're going to let out a breath, and they're going to say thank you, because they are wanting to hang out with you when you're grounded and co-regulated with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So there are so many of these calm tips that in going through the video program and also the book that is now Finding Calm. So many of these that I've used in riding and also in other aspects of life, from the breathing and different ways of breathing to the ones that are relational to the ones that are more cognitive. But again, I think the balance in this of recognizing that there's the techniques in the moment, to practice and to be able to feel better and to be more in touch with how we're regulating our own body systems. And then also having the bigger framework that allows for, okay, this is the focus. This is how I'm moving forward. This is how I'm assessing all of the different pieces. And this was the case with Martha and with Claire. Is I worked together with them intensively for about a month. And then from there, it was about a 6-month process of building lots of good experiences for both of them. After they got the better fitting saddle, did some work to help Claire feel better so that the active pain was gone, had the better experiences of being on trail and just even being together in a riding context. And then they were able to progress from there.
Yeah.
So it's
those small wins to build back. And I think that I'm looking at the comments again in the chat. I think that there's a couple of different challenges. There's the anticipation of a problem. There's the memory of a problem. And then there is how we cope with the problem. Right. And that is where, like, I'm seeing people say, like, how they go about trying to take care of themselves. And I see people saying things like, I am the problem, not my horse, in the language of it. And I would just want to say to that, like, no, you're not the problem. You have an experience that is real and valid, and it's the way you show up, and you can become part of the solution, right? Like, we don't have to stay with this like negative identity. We have to, and the horse world does this to us all the time. Well, I don't have this issue with your horse, I don't have this problem. True, because it's a real relationship and a real experience of two nervous systems coming together and vibing off of each other. And so there may be situations in which we're not the right match, like Teddy and I. But there may be situations like Martha and Claire in which they just needed some new tools and new ways of approaching things in order to solve the problem between the two of them.
Yes. Yeah. So I am Really excited. I've been excited for this moment since we first had a discussion about bringing this together over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And we are really, really looking forward to kicking us off with an official invite into Finding Calm.
Yay.
And, and those of you that are live here with us are the first that are hearing this. Our team has been working on this for a long time. I've seen some names in. Shay has been here in the comments. Shay was part of creating this and is one of the case studies that's featured in the program. And I am so looking forward to, as I was seeing your comments and seeing, reading the chat as Lisa was presenting, I was honestly thinking ahead to 6 weeks from now, 8 weeks from now, 6 months from now, and hearing the stories coming back of what you're now able to do with your horse and how you're feeling.
Yeah.
So this is your invite to join Lisa in Finding Calm. Finding Calm is the newest program through HorseClass. I'm going to put a link up here where you can go to learn about exactly what's included in the program. And we're going to be taking your questions both about what we talked about here on the webinar, and also now that this is up, you can go in, take a look, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about the program itself. So in Finding Calm, and I've got the videos up here. So let me do a screen share. And Lisa, do you want to walk us through kind of the main structure of the program?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's exciting to see what this is going to provide, because I believe I was the test case on it, right? And so, I went from being terrified to canter, crying during lessons and not ever trying it on my own, to my favorite thing to do is canter Cody. Not that that's happening very often because of where Cody's at in his training, but I can get on another horse and we joke, I just want a cowgirl on, like, just let me ride. This is just my delight. And I had an experience a couple of weeks ago at a work event where there was some self-reflection work being done. And the question was, where do you find your joy? And I thought about my lesson on Rosa at Concordia Stables. And I was like, that was joy. That was like 5-year-old, 8-year-old Lisa having a ball. And to think that with what I've been through in my personal life and my horse life in the last, 50 years, to have that as an adult, as an experience of joy, it's priceless, right? And it's come out of the hard work that I know each person here can do for themselves. Okay, so you have this screen. So one question I saw was, how do you get the book? How do you get the program? So it is a workbook. Actually, here's a version of the workbook that was a draft. It's a lot. And it's a lot in the best ways. You're going to find in the workbook, can you see it? You're going to find written content, worksheets, assessments, the calm tips, everything that you're looking for is going to be in the workbook. And then it's filled with QR codes that link to what you're going to find in the video curriculum. And so the video curriculum has live teachings that we filmed when we were at Honeybrook, as well as some additional teachings, interviews, examples, all sorts of things in the modules. And so the introduction's kind of setting the framework. It's a review of, it will be a review to you of what you heard in this, but in much more detail. So one question I saw was, how do you get the slides? This is content that's from the course, essentially. And then, so you'll have the introduction, the CALM acronym again. I'll go into the science of trauma. And let me say this, some people get a little skittish around the word trauma. I'm not going to be your mental health therapist in this program, but I am going to be your mental wellness support cheerleader. And you're going to be able to start to identify maybe some things that are happening in you outside of the tack in your personal life that's influencing your life at the barn, and begin to identify, hey, I think I need to work with a therapist. I think I might need to work with a coach, and I'm available for that. If you're in Pennsylvania, I'm available for therapy. But my goal is to help you find what you need where you are at. And so the introduction sort of sets that into motion. Then part one is connection, and all sorts of tools in that connection module of, evaluate your relationships, different tips and different examples, like an example of grooming with connection and breath work. You'll hear all of Cody's story in this. I didn't go into details, but I've learned a lot through him. And then we move into part two, which is the assessment part. And we're going to be looking at things like, are you the right rider for your horse? How is the polyvagal theory impacting both of you? Are you the right person for your barn? Is your barn the right person for you? How do you evaluate and be realistic on that? And then this is really important for a lot of you based on what you've shared in the chat. What do you do after a fall? How do you come back from a fall? When's the right time to get in the saddle? How should you go about riding again after an injury or some sort of physical or health setback for you or your horse? When there's anxiety, we talk about that quite a bit in both the workbook and the videos. And then we move into that learning module, which is module 3. And so this is one of my favorite modules, to be honest, because I talk about window of tolerance and created a chart that will give you a picture of how to assess your window of tolerance and your horse's window of tolerance, and be able to make better informed decisions about, is learning possible right now? Is growth and connection possible, or have we blown past our windows of tolerance? A pretty big and helpful section on cognitive distortion. So that's like that negative self-talk and how to work through that. And then goal orientation. That's a real special treat in this module, because some of how you show up has to do with what's called goal orientation. And we'll unpack that. And then SMART goals and the ARISE framework, which is something I use with all my clients. And then motivation is that fourth part. And so this is a really important piece of the puzzle, is learning how to deal with grief of what hasn't worked the way you wanted it to work, and the losses that you've endured as a horse person. And then how to make some decisions for moving forward. And so finding your calm place, we talk about that. What does that look like as a calm tip? And then a container exercise, which is a great grounding exercise, especially to leave stuff that's not at the barn home. And then we have the Finding Calm framework. And so that's part 5. And this part is heavy in the case study with Shay and Margot and the timeline exercise. And in the book, it is the beginning of your worksheets. And so that is where you begin creating your vision, your I hate the word goals, but monthly themes of what you want to focus on, and then beginning to put that calm framework into actionable steps for yourself. And then there's even more bonus resources, interviews that are really inspiring, and the growth tracker.
Yes. And so just to review, you'll get that video program that we were just going through there. These get shipped to you for free, no matter where you are. So the full personal workbook, which is, I love this because it's a combination of a textbook, an easy read personal story, and a personal workbook. So we call it the personal workbook, but really it's a lot more than that. And you're going to get so much science and technique and practical exercises. So Diane asked, are there practical exercises? Yes, there's specifically 22 calm tips, which are the exercises to do kind of on top of the framework, just to like pause, practice this, take this to the barn kind of exercises.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to get the growth tracker that is sent to you as well. And this growth tracker, Lisa, you developed this for your own tracking, correct?
Yeah. I've been using this for myself. I think of it as a planner in many ways, like the same way I sit down on Friday mornings and I write down what my schedule is going to look like for the next week and what I have to do and to-do list. I sit down with my Cody growth tracker, literally what I called it, and kind of look at what am I going to do with him each day? What am I, what's the reality of what happened? Weather, that's what happened, right? 90-degree heat wave, that's what happened. But then there's also a place to record what went well and what was hard, because our brain only ever wants to remember the hard things, the difficult things, the failures. So there's a place to write down what went well. And then there's, areas where you can assess, like, at the end of the week, assess how did we grow physically and mentally? How did my horse grow and how did I grow?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And part of why we wanted to include this is also one of the pieces of feedback that we get at HorseClass is students saying life is busy and it's really hard. I have all the best intentions when I start something, but then how do I stay on track to finish? And the growth tracker is a really good way to create a habit and to keep that habit going, not just through the time in the course, but afterwards as well.
Yeah. It's been helpful. I'll add this one thing. It's been helpful too, because one of the things you do is set a vision and set monthly themes. And it could be whatever. So I set a monthly theme at one point, like I want to work on my hands this month. And that was something I was able to go to both my riding instructor and trainer and say, this is my goal for this month. I want to work on my hands. And they actually came up with some things to do to help me work on my hands, right? So I'm not alone. We're working on this together. And it was great. It was a wonderful experience.
Yeah. And that highlights too, but having someone to work with and having a community around you, I think is a really important piece of doing a program like this. So when we structured this, we really wanted to create two different options because we want to make it as accessible as possible. And we want to have it available for those of you that say, hey, I'm going to start, but I'm going to do it completely on my own timeline. And I need an easy way to just get in and get started. We also wanted to have a version where you could work directly with Lisa through group lessons or through group calls and sessions each week. So 6 group sessions with Lisa, as well as having a place to get your questions asked to. So if you just need that personal touch and that personal feedback on your situation. So when you take a look at what's included, you're going to find that there are 2 different options. There's a self-study option and there's a coaching option. So you can choose which best fits what you're needing.
I see a question from Lori. It says, I don't own my horse, but I take lessons with a trainer on different horses. Can I use this? Yes. It's not horse specific. It's human specific.
Yeah, we had another question too from Terry. Does this course have lifetime access? And yes, it does. This is definitely the kind of material that you're going to want to go through and come back to and review the comm tips. Like we do with all of our printed resources now at HorseClass, you're going to find that through different sections of the book, including many of the comm tips, there's a little code. So you can easily scan this code with your phone, and then that's going to link to a part of the video program that is a demo of that tip. That is Lisa giving additional teaching or explanation, or an example of that concept. So that's the two stand completely alone, but they also come together to really create a unique and a rich learning experience for you.
Yeah. I see another question I'm going to answer. Does this talk about evaluating if you and your horse are not a good fit or your horse should retire? Yes. And that is often something I'm working with clients of having to make that decision and parse out what are the different aspects that are influencing this decision.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm just scanning through the comments here. Amazing stories. I am also looking forward to going back and to reviewing these. We are going to be posting the recording just as soon as we process here. So anyone that is wanting to go back and review, you're going to have access to this again. Mm-hmm. And the enrollment for Finding Calm will be open through July 2nd. So we're open through next Tuesday for enrollment that you can join. The coaching, the classes and calls with Lisa will be starting on the 17th. So you've got a little bit of time to get in and to get familiar with the content before those kick off. We do have limited spots in the coaching. So if you are wanting to do the coaching, I would recommend that you sign up for that sooner rather than waiting, until the end of this week that we're open, to make sure that you save your spot in there. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Lisa, this has been a absolute pleasure. I have learned so much in this presentation. I am so honored by everyone that has come, has attended live, and has left such open and honest comments through this. And I am every day inspired by the grit, the determination of our community. And that's really what brings us together, is the love of the horse and the desire to take a challenge and grow from it. And that's exactly what this program is going to bring.
Absolutely. It's such a privilege, Callie. Thank you that you created HorseClass, made this community possible, and have given us a place as fellow equestrians to grow. And I'm just really grateful to be part of that process now.
Yes. Well, thank you. We're so excited to have you as our newest instructor at HorseClass. So check out Finding Calm. Also, if you know anyone at your barn that you were listening to this and thinking so-and-so really needs this information, share it. You'll be able to share the link to this recording. And we would love to get this information out. It also is great to have a study buddy at the barn and to have more people that are understanding the science of what happens with the brain and the body in nervousness, in fear and anxiety. So help us share this information. We appreciate it. And let us know if you have any questions at all about Finding Calm. You can always reach us, support@horseclass.com.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Right on, calm.